Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today I'm here with my friend Sean O'Toole. We're going to be talking about data for marketing for real estate investors. Like there's been a huge evolution going on over the past few years. Of course, Sean has been a data guy for a long time. Sean was a data guy before it was cool, and now he's cooler than ever because it's in trend, I guess. So Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah. We were talking earlier, had you on the Flip Nerd show a long time ago. I don't remember how long ago it's been, but I bet it's been about 10 years.
Yeah, 5 to 10, somewhere in there.
Yeah, a long time. So, hey, I'm excited. I know you're a fellow data geek. You also own a data company and been doing this for a long time. Maybe just share a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into the business.
Yeah, so, I think it's important to start. I started off as a software programmer early. Like I got a computer when I was 10, was writing software professionally at 14, dropped out of computer science to start my first software company at 18, spent a while in Silicon Valley, did 3 venture-backed tech startups in Silicon Valley. So that was really my background up until the dot-com crash. And after that, I was a startup guy, and there was no startups really happening right then. And I turned down an offer to interview at Google, and that was dumb. But yeah, so right there at 2000, I kind of had this crossroads, and I took a year off just to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. Got my wife pregnant, played incessantly, and had a lot of fun, but ultimately needed to get back to work. And the guy I was hanging out with and going wakeboarding and kite surfing was in the real estate business. And unlike me, who was unemployed at the time, he was making a few $1,000,000 a year and had all this free time. And I went, boy, I'm really doing this wrong back in Silicon Valley because I have no free time when I'm working, and I'm not making $3,000,000 a year. So that led to my switch to real estate, flipped 160 properties, had a 55% annualized return on capital, so did okay. Up until the end of 2005, when I said, boy, I don't like this market at all. I don't want to own any real estate. Got rid of everything except our house, which I could talk my wife into selling. And, said, what do I do now? Well, most of those flips had been foreclosures, and I had a lot of foreclosure data. So I launched a company called Foreclosure Radar because I saw foreclosures were going through the roof.
Yeah.
And then that evolved into Property Radar, where we had property information on all properties. And then that's really evolved again to where we're mostly used for targeted outbound marketing today.
Yeah. Property Radar. That's great. And, it's interesting. I know we're going to get into some of these things, but I know you provide a skip tracing service. A lot of us that have data, it kind of goes hand in hand to provide skip tracing. Of course, that business has really been hammered over the past, couple of years for the most part. But I think there's this view of there are a lot of real estate investors that for a long time were pulling pretty generic lists for mailers, let's say, just like agent equity or something, right? And then you were one of the first on the scene to say, hey, we can get some unique data that starts to tell a different story, or it tells more of the story, right? And so I think of like a lot of real estate investors with data are like caveman with laser gun. Like they don't really know what to do with it, right? And I think a lot of real estate investors, especially up until the last few years, were just like trying to check a box. Like, yeah, I pull my own data, like some broad terms, right? And, of course, where they get it from and what the data is and all that stuff is super important.
And do they understand it?
Yeah. Do they even understand it, right? And then the problem is they're copying and pasting stuff in Excel spreadsheets and stuff, and a lot of problems are bound to happen when that certainly eventually something bad's going to happen. But maybe I want to ask you just a question, and this is obviously I know the answer already, but I want to hear your thoughts. Why is all data not the same?
Yeah, boy, that is just that's a great question. In so many ways I could go with that. So let's start where it is the same, right? So most of us are relying on public records data, right, which comes from the county assessor's office, the county recorder's office, and the county court, right? But any of us certainly that work on a national scale need to normalize that data because we've got 3,142 counties and they each do things a little differently, right? So there's big differences between vendors in how that data is gathered and processed. So I kind of always look at a couple of key things, which is how fast do you get that data from the source? And when you look at somebody nationally, you look at somebody like us, it could be really fast in LA County, maybe 2 or 3 days, and really slow in a California county like Alpine, where, there's days where there isn't a recorded document. We only go pick it up, maybe once a month because there's just no point in doing it faster and we'd have no customers there. So we still get it, but it varies. So it varies a lot. So that's one, right? Then, like assessor's data is digital. So you actually get it in digital form, it stays digital. But county recorder data is images. So you have to take that data off of those images and enter it. And for a long time, that was the best practice was to do that in the Philippines. You'd have two people enter the data, you compare the data, you take the best data. That really hasn't been cost effective. So now you got a lot more people doing single entry. First American's been really hard at work at doing AI-based, essentially advanced OCR to pull that data in. So there's big variations in not only which documents from, say, the county recorder are abstracted at all, then which fields are abstracted. So there's fields you can get from CoreLogic you can't get from First American. Almost everybody in this business, we multi-source, but almost everybody else is a First American or Atom reseller. And there's just fields that First American and Atom don't have that CoreLogic does have. CoreLogic's still the leader. They're super expensive and super hard to work with. We do buy their data. As well as data from most of the other players. But, there are fields I can't get anywhere else. So, everybody says, oh, well, we go collect our own data or whatever. Our source is the county recorder. There's 3,142 counties. CoreLogic doesn't collect every county. For the East Coast, almost everybody buys from the Warren Group. So, it's such a big thing, and there's just so much bad information, and so many people that are frankly outright lying, or I give them the benefit of the doubt they don't know. Jerry Norton's been pushing court data, and the data he's pushing that's court data doesn't come from the court. It simply isn't even available at the court. It's not court data. It's like, I don't know that he knows. Somebody should tell him.
Yeah. I'll send him a text. Say, hey, man, watch this podcast with Sean. Hey, so yeah, and I think that's one of the problems is a lot of people just assume that the data is all the same for one, but two, that when you buy it from somebody else, there's so many resellers of resellers that there's just so much junk. Like I get texts, at least a couple times a week asking me about houses. The most common is houses I don't own and I've never owned. Sometimes it's houses that I have owned but haven't owned for many years. And I'm just like, where is this data coming from that says this, right? And it's probably,
Right.
I get hit in the DMs all the time on Facebook and social media. Like people will pull data for me or sell me a list of probates or things. And it's like, pennies, but I'm like, I know this is crap. Like I know that this person that's offering to sell it for me doesn't even know what they're selling. They're just selling something that somebody else told them to sell. And
Right.
it's almost like none of us would ever go to say, hey, somebody has some bootlegged like fuel for your car. And they're like, yeah, it's in this big tub. Like just squirt it into your gas tank. You'd be like,
Right. Trust it.
no, like I don't trust that. But we're willing to put that fuel into our business, right? That we don't know where it came from or what it even is. It's just like supposedly has a label on it that says fuel. And you're like, okay. But in our business, we'll do it all day long.
And it's a really complex thing too, because, right, there's what is bad data, right? Like, so, I mean, there's truly bad data, which is junk sources, super out of
Right.
date, et cetera, right? But also in public records, there's lots of data that's not correct. So, okay, if the assessor says it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but you go to the house or the listing says it's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, is the assessor data wrong? Well, it's clearly wrong versus what was built, but it might be telling me that no permit was pulled to build that extra bedroom and extra bathroom. So is that bad data, or is that data that's actually going to save me a lot of trouble down the road? And, so, I think when you come to this data business, you just have to come with an exceptional level of curiosity. And then also, like, phone numbers. People are constantly changing phone numbers, right? So what's good or bad on a phone number? If every phone number I have isn't perfect, is that bad data? Well, industry standard's about a 70% right party contact rate. You know, if I was looking at most everybody resells IDI data, and when we were evaluating all the phone data sources, and I looked for phone data for 10 years, and then IDI came out and just started selling to everybody. But before that, I identified another source, which I think is awesome, and but they had a lower match rate than IDI had. And I was like, I should go with IDI. Everybody's going with IDI. I should go that direction. And I said, you know what? Before I do that, because this other folks were like, no, our data's better. You got to trust us. But, trust, right? So I made 100 phone calls. I just started calling people. I said, I got to make at least 100 phone calls. And I took random samples from both. And my right party contact, even though my match rate was lower, my right party contact rate was so much higher with my data source to the point that I came up with that this other vendor was just making up phone numbers and filling them in, and to have a high match rate. Like, it just, but we still have a little lower match rate, and we still only have maybe an 80% right party contact. So you make 10 calls, 2 of them, 3 of them are gonna be to the wrong person, or an
Right.
old phone number, or
Yeah.
to their mom, or to their brother, or something, right?
Yeah.
And that's the nature of the industry. So is that bad data? No, I think it's better data than is available elsewhere, and I think you can make a lot of money, with calling campaigns with 70% correct or 80% correct data. We'll save you time and money using us, where you get more right parties than using what everybody else is using, where I know for a fact, because I made 100 phone calls, you'll get fewer right parties.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting too is like people that are our best possible prospects are trying to not be found. So like you said, they're often changing their phone number because they didn't pay their bill, and next thing you know, they got to get a new number, or they're trying to dodge creditors or whatever it could be. Like I have a few different phone numbers, I guess, and I've had some numbers that have come and gone, but my primary number I've had for 20 years or some long period of time, right? But I'm obviously not trying to run from, might be running from some people, but not creditors.
Right, exactly. Well, this is where multi-channel marketing becomes, so important. And
Right.
and if I really have a hot deal, I'm sending them a FedEx, because everybody opens a FedEx. And it'll
Yeah.
cost me $40 or whatever, but at the end of the day, right? Like, so the multi-channel, try to hit them up online with ads, email, phone, direct mail, or at the extreme end, the FedEx envelope. But I think multi-channel, especially now with so many people competing in the space, I just think that's real key to differentiate yourself. Because at the end of the day, impressions build trust, right?
Right.
Donald Trump is president because he gets more impressions than anybody, right? And you can argue that's for other reasons, but I would say that's at the top of the list, right? You see his name, hear his name, and why we keep electing folks with, or trying to elect folks with the same names, Bushes and Clintons and whatever, right? Because name familiarity is important, and multi-channel marketing helps you do that.
Yeah. Well, and some people, obviously everybody resonates different with different types of ads. I mean, I'm online all day long, so if I'm ineffective. I'd be a good prospect for online advertising. I just spend too much time online. Even though I own a direct mail company, I haven't opened my mailbox in months. I mean, my wife handles that. Most of the stuff goes to the recycling bin, and a couple other things that need to get handled. She generally handles, right? And so everybody's a little bit different. I mean, I don't answer a phone call if I don't recognize it, but I see 100% of my texts. you know,
Right.
so
Yeah.
everybody's different. I know my grandma, like I can't text her. She doesn't have the ability to do that, right? But she would get mail, right? So everybody's a little bit different. And I think, there's also something for kind of omnipresence too, is like sometimes people are seeing all these channels, but like and I'm a sales guy, so I'm probably a little bit different than the average person, but I like to reward good marketing. Like I want to work with people that I'm like, man, I'm seeing you guys everywhere and there's something to this. In your mind you start to think maybe this is fate, like somebody's trying to tell me something, and it's just like, yeah, the marketers are they're trying to tell you to use this
Well,
product. But there's
we
some element of just like omnipresence, of just like everywhere I turn I see this company, right?
Well, because we all want to work with people who are successful, and we all want to,
Right.
we know if lots of other people are choosing that thing, then it's safer for us to choose. So, I mean, there's a lot of psychology around that that says the more I see something, the more I should trust it, which is why, certain names dominate the press and other things. So, I mean, that is as fundamental a law of marketing as I think you can have.
Yeah. Let's
Impressions
talk
equal
about
trust.
with data. I want to talk about data a little bit more. So one of the things about data, obviously the basis for one of my companies, Investor Machine, and I know you guys do a lot of this too, is not just data. It's the mixture, right? It's like, what is the mixture of these different things telling you? Like one thing is, age inequity used to be popular when not everybody and their brother was mailing. Now there's a ton of people that are over 65 that have a ton of equity, that have no interest in selling, and they're going to be alive for another 20 years on average, right? So, but when you start to mix in, but they filed a probate 4 months ago. They're not 1 year, not two, but 3 years behind on back taxes. When you start to layer in this stuff, and it's like a recipe, right? It starts to tell you a better story when you pull all this together. Like any of those things by themselves might not have been as important. Maybe a probate is probably the most important single data point, but together it starts to tell you a story, right? And that's where I think there's a ton of data out there. People can go pull data from anywhere, but unless they're referencing other data points that are kind of telling more of the story, I mean, there's a lot of power in that, right?
I I couldn't agree with you more. The whole company and the whole product is kind of built around that premise. We have nearly 300 different criteria, which is more than any other tool ever built in the real estate space. It's more than a list source or anything that's ever been built. And some people will say, "Oh, we have 200 criteria," but they're talking about like single family, multifamily. They're counting each of those as a criteria. I'm counting property type as a criteria with the 200 property types we have as one criteria, right? So, like, one of our competitors came out and said, "Hey, we have 40,000, different possible combinations and permutations that you can get by using our criteria tool." I calculated ours, and it was just under a Google, and that's a Googol. Google it, and it's a very big number. So, the bottom line is that I very much believe in that, and the reason is good marketing is about telling a story. You hit on this. You talked about the story. The data can tell you a story. That's half of it, but
Yeah.
you need to use data to tell a story. And by if you're just let's say you're mailing absentee owners. Let me ask you, what's an absentee owner, right? Is it a burbro? Is it a tired landlord that's about ready to retire? Is it, a young family who owns a duplex? Is it a short-term rental? Is it a vacation home? Is it like, think about all the different things that an absentee owner could be. And you're literally
Yeah.
going to do the same marketing to all of them? Like, it makes no sense to me at all. And this is what
Right.
most people do. even specialty lists like probates or foreclosures, treating all those the same doesn't make any sense. A foreclosure that's underwater, a foreclosure where the guy's been repeated mortgage fraudster is very different than somebody who's having some other life event or issue, or maybe it's a foreclosure after somebody's died. These are very different things that require very different marketing. You need to tell a different story. And this is how, as an investor, you can differentiate yourself and do better than your competitors. Because especially in this business, like people go, oh, we should mail fake checks, and everybody mails fake checks, right? Oh, we should do yellow letters, and everybody does yellow letters, and they all do it at the same time to the same lists using the same vendors.
Yeah.
And I've been anti that from day one. And honestly, it makes our tool harder to use. Because, I don't give you the same 5 templates, and I don't give you, those just quick lists. We do now, sort of. We do have templates. We do have, if you just want absentee owners, you can click one button and get them. But I really encourage people, go think about who it is you want to talk to. Come up with a unique story. Come up with a unique story nobody else is telling. Come up with a unique solution nobody else is offering. You want to do better than your competitor, that's how you do it.
Yeah. And it's going to continue to evolve. I think a lot of people end up picking something and just out of laziness or busyness, they just keep doing the same thing for ever and ever and ever as well. And sometimes they might say, well, I'm just trying to be really consistent. I mean, I'm not saying to be inconsistent with your brand, but the techniques have evolved. I mean, that's the interesting thing is mail is been around for a million years, but the data behind it, the sophistication with figuring out what's working, testing colors, like testing calls to action, testing stuff like, should I have my website on there or not? Should I have a picture of me or my family? Or like being able to test like all those things is really where the sophistication, I think, comes in,
Yeah, and the tracking, all of that.
Tracking.
There's just so much more, intelligent mail barcode, allowing you to track where the piece is in the stream and the rest. I mean, there's an awful lot that's changed, and
Yeah.
a lot more that's changed, right? That's
Yep.
what's great about your service, right? Is you do all that for them. With my
Right.
service, we give them the tools for them to do it themselves. So it's kind of the two ends of the
Yeah.
of the
DIY or
spectrum.
done for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
DIY or do it for me. Yep,
Yep.
exactly.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about kind of privacy laws, best practices and things on that, because a lot of people hate that there's data out there on them. I've kind of given up a long time ago. I was like, there's no way that, I can hide from all this stuff. And so, but there's also best practices on how you use it, especially with skip tracing and I guess just overall data, but maybe share, your thoughts on best practices with data.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's because I'm a computer guy, right? I know the Q point is coming, and that's when quantum computing reaches the point where there's no encryption, nothing's safe, everything's visible. Like, so I'm kind of with you. I don't care. I'm an open book. You can go find my stuff. I believe in public records. I think it's part of what makes America great, and the rest. But we've got a big push towards, privacy. People don't like feeling targeted and the rest. So, like, one of the things we always tell our customers, and we actually have something we call the Good Neighbor Marketing Pledge, is, targeting is what you do, but not what you say, right? You should never make someone feel targeted. And you're like, well, how do I mail to foreclosures without making people feel like I targeted them because they're in foreclosure? And a lot of that just comes down to your card. Imagine door knocking, right? And saying, hey, you're in foreclosure, right? That's pretty confrontational. Instead, knock on that door and say, hey, I'm a local landlord. I just wanted to let you know foreclosures are increasing in the area, right? I'm an expert in foreclosure, and I just want you to, it's not going to be like 2008, nothing to worry about. And if you know anybody in this situation, I'm a great resource and I'd be happy to help. But you as a homeowner, I just want to tell you, there's nothing to worry about. Now you're demonstrating empathy, you're demonstrating expertise, you're not making them feel targeted. Like, there's ways to
Right.
do this.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so that's one of them. And,
Yeah.
you know, and if you show empathy and the rest in your marketing, you could probably break some of the rules. I'm not telling you to. We're going to say contractually you have to follow the rules if you sign up for my service. But you could break some of the rules and you're not going to get in trouble because people aren't going to report you because they're not going to be pissed.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing to keep in mind. And one of the things I always, especially with investors, I always say, okay, here's this marketing piece. Now, let's take this marketing piece and imagine that your kid's playmate at schools, parents are in this situation and they got that marketing piece. And you're sitting down for dinner with them and they find out that marketing piece came from you. How are they going to feel about you when they look at it? Right? Like start your marketing from that standpoint, because then your marketing will have empathy and thought and think about that person rather than think about you. Investors are the worst. They're always, I buy houses for cash. I do this. I close fast. You know what, investors, I got something for you. And this is for myself too, as an investor. Like nobody gives a fuck about you. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't use that word in this podcast, but nobody cares, right? Care about them, right? And what
Yeah.
they need and what problems they're having, right? What is
Yep.
the problem somebody in foreclosure is having? They're having problems like, how do they tell their family? Where are they going to live? How are they going to rent a place when their credit's been ruined? Right? Those are their problems. The foreclosure's not their problem, right?
Yeah.
It's the bigger picture problem, but the real world
Right.
problem of being able to move on and do something. I mean, how many foreclosure postcards go out with, hey, I can help you find a home? I have a rental available for you, a place to go that keeps you in your school district, especially for folks that have kids, right? And that's where like children present as a criteria we have, nobody else has. That's why that's there.
Let's talk about with that kind of with where data's at today and kind of where it's going. You can get so specific on your marketing now. Like everything used to be generic. Like everything was throwing spaghetti at a wall like 10 years ago, when I was 15 years ago, even when I was getting started, 17 years ago, I guess, gosh. But it's getting so specific now that I think, for a lot of real estate investors, they have a hard time competing with those that are putting in the effort to be very specific, to use the tools that are out there right now. And there's a bunch of old school people that think that this is a fad and it's kind of going back. We basically went from kind of, it's still the Wild West, but it's not as much of the Wild West as it used to be. I mean, where do you see for, I guess, kind of efficiency from an efficient market standpoint, from a real estate investor standpoint, where that's going? Obviously, you got iBuyers now, you've got institutional players, you've got a lot of things that are different than when we were coming up, right?
Yeah, yeah. We've worked with a lot of those larger players, as have you, I'm sure.
Yeah,
And they're really good. They're really sophisticated, and they're hiring data scientists and other stuff. You know, through that. So yeah, it's getting tougher. I think the big thing is like with some of those bigger players, right? They're just not truly local. And so I think being, having your niche and being better at it, kind of the do things that don't scale. That's a really popular tech, thing for how you get a startup off the ground is you do things that don't scale because those big companies and those bigger players can only do things that scale. And so you get more local, right? Get more personal. Do door knocking. They can't do that, right?
right.
Direct mail, a little more expensive, but it's hard to do at scale, right? I always tell my realtor customers, like, Zillow's never going to send every person in your neighborhood a direct mail. They have 100 million possible, consumers. They're not going to spend $50 million on a piece of direct mail, but you've got 1,000, you can spend $500, right? It works for you. It doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing. Focus on the things that work for you. It's really hard to win in SEO and some of those things. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but to get to be top 3 is tough. It's real work unless you're in
Yeah.
a real niche market. And the more niche you are, the better chances you have at that.
Yeah. Focus on what you can control, right? You can't control everything.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the current market. Like, what are your thoughts on, nobody knows what is going on. There's all sorts of, you know, the, by the time the show comes out, maybe this will all be figured out, but there's a lot of concern with all the tariff stuff. There's, all these, I kind of made a meme today. I was like, the people that can't afford to pay off their college loans are all of a sudden tariff experts. But anyway, who knows where all that's going to go? There's a lot more going on than just that, but there is probably a fairly significant reset going on in the economy as a whole. Like, where do you see this playing out? Let's just say this year, by the end of this year, what do you see going on with the real estate market? And I know it's different from market to market as well, obviously.
Yeah, it is tough. Charlie Munger a number of years ago, I think during the COVID crisis, says that anybody who predicts what's going to happen from here is a charlatan or an idiot because it's too unprecedented to predict, right? And I'm a Buffett Munger fan, like so that's kind of how I feel about it, big picture. But I think there are a couple of things that you know kind of I think about in this moment, right? So look, what we did here for a long time, and my grandfather and probably your grandfather fought in World War II to establish globalism. Like, I mean, that's what World War II, that was the outcome of World War II, right? We all these European countries were fighting each other. The French were stealing the British's boats. It was just all a mess, right? And in World War II, we all unified against Germany and then ultimately against Russia, right? So NATO and all the rest exists to keep Russia at bay. And then we went to China and said, hey, China, there's another path for you here. If you'll just align against Russia, we'll buy your goods, right? So that's kind of the big picture history. Like, that's what we fought World War II to do. We unified Europe, and we created globalism. And we said, you know what? You can move your stuff around on the seas because we're going to protect the seas. So like that was what we won out of World War II, right? It is a global society. And in that, we screwed, the Rust Belt in the South. And we didn't come up with another plan for them. And we're paying for that now, right? Because
Right.
globalism has lots of benefits. I have more computing power in my pocket than the entire world had in 1960, and I had it for $1,100.
Yeah.
With tariffs, that's now going to be $1,700 for the same phone, but or at least the proposed tariffs. But it worked great pretty much for the world. Like, the whole world has done very, very well under that regime. And certainly we've been the leaders of that regime, and we get to have, the world's reserve currency as part of it. But yes, there's a huge imbalance. And is it sustainable forever? Maybe not. And there's some experts that say because of demographics collapse, globalism's going to end, regardless of whether we end it through, a trade war or just because of its own weight. So, probably some change is necessary. But what we have to realize is what trade deficits mean is we export goods, right? Sorry, we import more goods than we export, which means we export dollars. When we export dollars, those dollars get reinvested back here because there's nothing else for those countries to do with them. It's just a fiat currency. It's paper. It's no good to them. So they invest it back, and they buy our treasuries, and they buy our mortgage-backed securities and the rest, and that keeps our interest rates low. And that's been the basic trade, right? We get cheap goods and we get cheap debt, and they get a whole bunch of jobs, and they get to bring their economies up and try to catch up with the US, which nobody's close to. So that's been the world order, and now we're trying to change it. And, I think it's not the way I would go about trying to change it. I think there's some reasons to try to change it. But a lot of people right now are saying that they think what's going to come out of this and is lower interest rates. And that may be a flight to safety move, lower interest rates. But ultimately, if we're not exporting dollars, we're going to have higher interest rates. So if we move to a protectionist, make stuff here in the US, TVs go from $300 to $3,000, and interest rates probably, are in the high single digits to low double digits, right? I think that's where we're headed long
Okay.
term if we stay down this path.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing your insights on that. So, what I guess for real estate investors, the significance there is, we can't predict what's going to happen here. However, the average American family has like less than $1,000 in savings or something like that. So there's a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. Not that we wish that for them, not that we did that to them either. I mean, they got themselves in that situation one way or another from the decisions they made in their life, right? So what it essentially means is they may not be able to afford that house for long, and they might need some relief from folks like us ultimately.
Yeah. And I think there will be likely more opportunity and more movement, right? So the one thing we've had is we've had a pretty relatively stagnant real estate market. People have been locked into their house due to low interest rates. And the economy's been booming for quite a while, all things considered. And so there hasn't been much impetus to move. And so we've seen a lot fewer transactions in the market. And we're likely to see, whenever you get periods of change, you're going to see more transactions, and more transactions is more opportunity for people who want to do transactions. Yes, I agree with you on that.
One of those, one of the negatives of the market doing well and those cheap interest rates is people got in and they could afford that interest rate. They can't afford the next one, which is why they're not selling. There's not as many transactions, right? But also their taxes and insurance have just shot up, and that's putting the squeeze, on the cost of home ownership now these days, right?
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
the insurance is especially problematic. We definitely have seen people forced out of, I live in the mountains and in the forests, and we've seen people literally have to move because of the increases in insurance costs.
Yep. Yep. It's an interesting time for sure. If nothing else, we can say we live in interesting times.
I mean, I would honestly say I got forced out of my last house, partially because I got divorced, but my insurance when I moved into that house with $3,000 a year, my last quote on insurance was $60,000 a year
Oh, wow.
before I
Wow. Wow. Wow.
sold.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So that's a pretty big increase.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Sean, thanks for sharing some insights with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
If folks want to learn more about you or about Property Radar, where can they go?
Sean at Property Radar is just my email address. Propertyradar.com is our website, and I'm on, and the company's on all the usual channels, Facebook, X. I'm not super active socially, but I definitely respond to direct outreach.
Awesome.
LinkedIn.
We'll add some links. We'll add some links down here in the show notes. So, Sean, thanks again for spending some time with us today.
No, thank
Great to
you.
see you.
Awesome to be here.
Yeah,
Okay.
great to see you again. And everybody, hope you have a great day. Hope you got some good insights from the show today. I mean, if nothing else, it's an interesting time, and it is going to create opportunities for us. I mean, whenever, not that we wish this, but kind of like a trader in the market, like volatility is a good thing for real estate investors. Ultimately, it causes a little bit of chaos, and we can be the solution that maybe that seller needs. So, not that we want those things. That's just the reality of the world we live in. So, appreciate you guys a bunch. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.